So you're thinking about moving to Montana? Well, in this video, we're going to take you through the town of Stevensville, Montana. We're here just at the border of the Bitterroot National Forest at the Kootenai Creek Trailhead, and the town of Stevensville sits just to the east of us a few miles. We're going to take you through some neighborhoods, show you some different houses at different price points, so you can kind of see what would be in your budget. And if you'll stay with us till the end of the video, I'm going to share some very interesting facts about Stevensville that you definitely don't want to miss. So if this is the first time to the Montana Real Estate Channel, you'll want to subscribe and tap that notification button so you are the first to know about things that are happening in Montana real estate. My name's Craig Cyphers, and I work with my third generation realtor daughter, Erica, at Cyphers Family Real Estate. And my family's been helping folks buy and sell real estate since 1966. And we get calls and emails every day from people just like you who are looking to make the move to Montana. So if you'll send us a text, shoot us an email, give us a call, we'll be able to help you make a nice smooth transition, and all the information's in the description below. Now, as you can see, we've got some snow, which is actually a little bit unusual for Stevensville, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's also about 40 degrees outside. And so let's go take a look at some real estate. Stevensville is special to Erica and I because we grew up there. And as I mentioned, you'll want to stay to the end of the video, and I'll share some fun facts with you. And so let's go look at some real estate.
Here we're headed south down Main Street in the original Townsite of Stevensville. There on the left is the Hotel Galisson, which was built in 1915. The North Valley Library and physical therapist and a relatively new bank. And then as we get to the four-way stop off to the left, and that old historic building, which I believe was in 1908, is now houses Exit Realty Bitterroot Valley North. And as we travel down, there's little shops and some of these historic buildings. And as we go a little further, we'll be near the end of the south end of Main Street with some insurance, banks, great little restaurant. Traveling north on Main Street, we get into a very historic block here. These buildings were built in 1905, 1910, 1915. One of the taverns actually burned down in the 20s and was rebuilt in 1920. That's the High Country Stop to your left there. And then as we finish out going north on Main Street, the highway, we call it the East Side Highway, heads north and east out of Stevensville. And again, we're still in the original town site of Stevensville. And as we come around the corner, we'll see the Forest Service building for the Bitterroot National Forest. And as we come around, there are a number of historical homes in Stevensville. This one on the left is the Mann House. It was built actually in 1920. And then a lot of these little homes were built in that same time period. Always seemed to be at the end of the street that was anchored by pretty nice home. See this red one on the left, also very bold. And as we get down to the end of this block, the anchor home on that is the Albert May House. You can see there's another historic home. The Albert May House, which we'll highlight here at the corner, was actually Victorian, built in 1898. There that is. And then as we turn the corner, the Thornton Hospital will be off to your immediate left, the red brick building, which is now the Stevie Hotel. and that was built in 1905. To the left is the Bass House, which was owned by a prominent couple of brothers who were fruit growers. And the Bass House was actually my childhood home, and quite a long history there. And as we continue down the street, there are a number of older homes that were actually built, in that area. In fact, the one that's coming up on the corner, that is actually one of the older homes of town. It was actually built in the 1890s and is on the National Register of Historic Places, as most of these older homes in Stevensville are. And again, this is the original town site in Stevensville. And here on the end of the street is the old academy, which is many, many years ago turned into the United Methodist Church. Now, as we continue east on Park, this area then, once we get past this yellow house up here, was actually countryside. And they built another subdivision in there. It was called the May Edition. Well, you may remember the Albert May house. Well, the Mays also built another house, the May family, on the end of this block. The Danny Wright house was coming just up on the left, and that home was built in 1909. It's this little yellow house that you see off to the left. And at the end of the street, we'll see the home that's on 1.5 acres, about 3,000 square feet. It was built in 1905, and it's this brick building that you see right there on the left-hand side of your screen. And the cookhouse, which was also a May home, was built in 1910, and it sits on 5 acres and 3,000 square feet.
So here we are. But just down the street from the May Edition, and this right behind me, which this home right here is for sale, and we'll get into that. This is the original town site of Stevensville. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move into the Peterson Edition, and I'll give you a little information about that as we go along. So come on, let's take a look at some real estate.
Now, the home here that on the left was built in 1910, and the one that was for sale on the right is listed at $299, the little yellow one that we saw. Now, this is the Peterson Place Edition, and this is an area of real high groundwater. And so the homes in here, you have to be very careful about ventilation, because the groundwater is so high that oftentimes the crawl space is just full of mud. I know I bought a house down here back in the mid-'80s. This is the yellow one that we see in the far back there. I bought that house for $38,000, sold it for $56,000, and then helped another client buy it for $94,000. They renovated and sold it for $156,000. So most of these homes were built in the early 70s. This one right across the street was completely renovated. My sister sold that not too awfully long ago. It was a nice renovation with a mother-in-law or an additional apartment in it. And so in the mid 70s. And so this is just very close to the high school, which we'll see here at the end of the street. And there's all sorts of exciting things that you can see. This is called Spring Street in the Peterson Edition. And some of our local wildlife can be seen right up here. We'll take a moment and take a look at them. It's always exciting to see deer out in the street. Here they are at the house playing around. Wildlife in Montana. It's right at your fingertips. Here's another old stone home that was also a Sears catalog.
At the base of the Bitterroot Mountains at Father Ravalli Park. And at the end of the video, we'll get into a little bit about Father Ravalli. But here we are in a newer part of town, which is called the Lead Dayton Edition, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 was done in the early 80s, and then when interest rates went up so high during the Volcker years, the building kind of stopped, and Phase 2 was left undone, and we built our first house in 1990 at Phase 2. And so we'll go through the two phases. And so let's go look at some real estate.
This is Lead Dayton Edition, Phase 1. Most of the houses here built out by 1979, 1980. They're typically for anywhere from 1,100 square feet, 1,300 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1 bath. Many of them have been renovated. And these sold like hotcakes over the years. In fact, I sold this one on the right a couple of times. And so I mentioned earlier about the Volcker years. Of course, the Fed chairman raised interest rates in the early 80s. And many people would remember interest rates as high as even 18%. So when we look at our interest rates hovering around 7 or 8, that's pretty cheap relatively. And so most of the development in here had pretty well stocked, and 4 of it started off in phase 2, which is just to the south of this one. But these homes, most of them were well kept, and they've sold anywhere in here from right around 300 to 350, high 300s in some cases, depending on the amount of renovation. Currently, there are no homes that are for sale in phase 1. In phase 2, my daughter just got done closing this home in front of us, this white one, just under 1,600 square feet for $410,000. And in phase 2, these homes were built pretty much all in between 1990 and 1995. And they range in price anywhere from the 410 up into the mid to high 500s, depending on size. And some of them are very well appointed, have been basically redone. And they are currently, there are no homes in this particular neighborhood that are for sale. Homes in here will go very quickly if they hit the market. And there has not been much in the way of inventory in Lead Dayton Edition phase 1 or 2. And over the last year, maybe a handful of houses have sold in this subdivision. And this subdivision, of course, was taken over by the banks when the thing was nearby back in the 80s. And so we were able to buy homes on rolling options for $7,000 a piece. So pretty cheap real estate at that point in time. Today, there are no lots that are available, and so if you can compare land prices with anything. This was our neighborhood in the 90s. Of course, my partners and I built 12 houses in this development, and this other greenish one right here on the left coming up was where we raised the family.
Here we are at the George A. Smith subdivision. Now, this is the north portion of the George A. Smith subdivision, and a lot of these properties were built in the 80s. And we'll kind of drive through this subdivision. We'll get over on the George A. Smith subdivision on the south side, where there were newer homes built, in 2000, early 2000s, mid 2000s. And as you can see behind me, we have many of these multifamily, primarily duplexes here in the George A. Smith subdivision on the north side of Stevensville. A lot of good investment properties over here. They're a little bit older, but if they're well taken care of, they can produce some nice incomes. The one directly behind me actually was one of my investment properties. And so we'll go through this subdivision and point out some houses. And we'll get over on the new side, which will be real obvious to you. There are a lot of fourplexes in that area, as well as some single-family homes. So here we go.
As you can see, coming into the north side of the George A. Smith subdivision, some of these duplexes have kind of a mix in terms of how we would say it, special items in the yards, and then others had treasure. But for the most part, many of these duplexes are actually owned, occupied by rent one side and live on the other, and families. Now, this particular neighborhood over here to the right is a very quiet, you see. And as we come around the corner, we will be moving into the newer segment of George A. Smith. You can see in front of me there, you may see there's the pool at that house. There's some multifamily condos here on the left. Many of these homes were built in here after Lead Dayton Edition Phase 2 was completed. So these homes are, and the little, even though Italy, but it's too, they are between 1,500 and 2,200 square feet, and they can fetch upwards of the high 500s. And there are a number of condominiums, as well as fourplexes that are income properties. And it's a relatively quiet neighborhood, a little bit of a mix in terms of the multi-family condo fourplexes. It's right down from the post office with walking distance to the store. Yes, it's also very popular, but location, again, not a lot of inventory here, but it's many homes that come on the market here, DoorDash. It's probably been about 90 days from list to close. Very, again, very popular. And then right up here, we're moving on to the East Side Highway, again, on the south end of town. So you have some businesses, including the post office. Just keep going, go past the post office, condominiums, and let's set off to the right, the grocery store. So it's very convenient for folks who live in that neighborhood. Next neighborhood is Twin Creeks Homestead, which is a relatively new subdivision. It was actually platted prior to the downturn in 2008, 2007, and it's sat empty for quite a while. In about 2013 or 14, homes started popping up in there. It's a full subdivision now. A number of builders got in there, and over the past 10 years or so, they've filled it up pretty quickly. These homes range in size from 1,600 up to about just under 2,000 square feet, pretty much all 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about quarter-acre lots. This area also has high groundwater, but in order to solve that problem, all these homes are built on a slab. And it is on city water and sewer, so it is actually incorporated in the town of Stevensville, but it is in what we call the Burnt Fork Valley. So it's a little bit out of town. It's got wonderful views, and it is very popular. And currently, there are no current listings in here that are available. Our next and final subdivision is Creekside Meadows. Again, relatively new subdivision. The homes in here tend to be a bit larger. Some of them are upwards of 3,000 square feet, but we're between 22 and 3,000 square feet. Again, a very popular subdivision. Homes don't last in the market very long here. It is, again, outside of town, towards the North Burnt Fork. It has wonderful views. Again, it's on city water and sewer, and very popular. And there is another phase that is going in, and lots are selling. This is just to the south of this particular subdivision. So there's going to be more housing. We'll have to see what kind of price points there'll be there. It will be a mixed neighborhood, so there's going to be some multifamily in that portion of it.
So as I told you, we're going to tell you some surprising facts about Stevensville at the end of the video. And we are here at the Montana State Park, Fort Owen State Park, which is the original site of St. Mary's Mission, which was established in 1841. In fact, that's why Stevensville is considered Montana's oldest settlement. In fact, it's the oldest settlement in the interior Northwest. And it actually was established just over here near the river. And in 1850, the Jesuits sold it to John Owen, who made a trading fort here called Fort Owen. And so this is Fort Owen. And now we're going to probably check out the actual site of the mission as it exists now when the Jesuits came back to town. Remember, Stevensville is the oldest community, the oldest settlement in the interior Northwest, 1841. So here we are at the site of St. Mary's Mission. The old church is behind us. Now, the original location that you'll recall was at where Fort Owen State Park is located. And Father DeSmet was the one that founded the mission in 1841, which is, again, the oldest settlement in the interior Northwest. And then when Father Ravalli came back to Stevensville and they built this church behind us, the mission, as well as Father Ravalli's home, he was the first physician, first pharmacist in Montana, a lot of firsts. So really, the first of Montana is, in fact, Stevensville. And so I hope that was a fun fact for you. And look for us on our next video on the Montana Real Estate Channel.
For more about St. Mary's Mission, pause this and take a read. And remember, the Bitterroot is the banana belt of Montana. That's why it was so unusual for us to have snow.